Here's how to find every major, minor, and diminished triad on the middle 3 strings. If you haven't seen my other video yet on extracting triads from one symmetrical shape up and down the fingerboard, you might consider checking that out first and then meeting me back here for the middle 3 strings. In this starting shape, from which we're going to pull all of the triads out of, I've got my second finger on the 2nd fret on the 4th string. And I've got my index finger across the 1st fret on the 3rd string and the 2nd string. Everything else that follows will be an adaptation from that starting shape. For any major triad, you're going to lower any note in that shape by 1 fret only. You could get, or you could get, or you could turn that into. I move fast, but don't worry. We're going to come back in just a moment and make sense of how you can identify which triad each of those shapes belongs to, whether it's A flat or C or E, so on and so forth. But to get the shapes under your fingers right away, for any minor triad, you'll raise any note in that shape up 1 fret, starting again from the master shape. Any string, any note up 1 fret, keep everything else the same. So a minor triad will be here. Or you transform the master shape into this minor triad. Does that look familiar if you learned guitar out of Mel Bay? Or you transform the starting shape into this. So to review so far, you've got 3 major shapes. These are all movable. You've got 3 minor shapes. And the only thing remaining is a diminished triad. A diminished triad is a form of a minor triad that's taken to the next level. So to get to the diminished triad, we're going to raise any note up 1 fret, just like we did to get to minor triad, and then we're going to lower another note by 1 fret. So it's a combination of the approach that led to the major and the minor shapes. Take that shape, let's raise up the note on the 2nd string, and let's lower the note 1 fret on the 3rd string. That lands us on the open 3rd string. Keep the note underneath the same. Diminished is not scary once it makes sense how simple things really are in the guitar. That's a diminished triad. We're going to give them all names again, I promise. Or we could make this diminished shape. Remember, we're going to raise 1 note by 1 fret and lower another note by 1 fret. So what if I raise on the middle on the 3rd string up 1 fret, and I lower on the 4th string by 1 fret? That is another diminished triad. And what if I go for my 3rd diminished shape? Let's lower the note in this case on the 2nd string, so that'll land on the 2nd open string, on the B string. And let's raise the note by 1 fret on the 4th string. It's going to lead to a shape and a transformation that looks like this. Starting here, you wind up here. So let's give these all a name so that you can start seeing chord tones up and down the fingerboard and demystifying the process. All you need in order to give these names now is to either be already familiar with the names and the notes up and down the fingerboard on the first 12 frets on the middle 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings, or if you're not there yet, just get a handy chart off the internet. There must be a million free ones. Once you have that information, you can spot the major triads this way. Any note that you lower by 1 fret, such as the way that we got from to. In terms of theory, you lowered into the 5th scale degree. But maybe you don't know what that is, and maybe you don't care yet. So the shortcut is that the name of the note that's directly above the one that you lowered is the root. I lowered this. Above it, I have the first fret on the second string. I look at a chart, or I already know it, and I see the note C. This is a C major triad. Let's see if that works out if we change something else. Let's go back to the starting shape. Let's lower the note on the fourth string and see if we can identify which triad that is. Well, I went from here, lowered one fret. So I lowered on the fourth string. What's the string above? Well, it's the third string. I'm at the first fret on the third string. What's the name of that note? It's the note A flat. So this is an A flat triad. And what about identifying the third major triad? Well, if I go back here and I have lowered the note on the second string, I don't have a string above anymore to guide my ship. So instead, I just circle around this pattern. I'm only on strings 4, 3, and 2. Well, there's nothing above 2. What's the lowest note in this pattern? Well, it's on the fourth string. That's the note E. This is an E major triad. All three of those shapes are movable. So let's say you want to play C, F, and G on the middle three strings. Well, I had C here. The root, the name of the triad, is on the second string, so that's C. Well, if I just move this shape up, and I got to replace the open third string with an index finger, so the fingers in the left hand will change, but the shape itself stays the same. Move it up. Can I find an F note on the second string? Here it is. Can I find a G note on the second string if I want a G major triad with this shape? G is right here, and so I use the same major triad shape. I now have C, F, and G. Remember what I said in the video on Hendrix's triads? Once you have the basic shape, you can also start putting in the Hendrixy moves with it. I bet you wish that you had some other major triad shapes nearer, so that you didn't have to go from G here all the way back down here. Well, we learned 3 shapes for major triads. We also had this shape. In that case, we lowered on the fourth string, looked above to the third string, identified the note as A flat. This is an A flat major triad because it's the note A flat on the first fret of the third string. Could I find a C note on the third string and have a C major triad with my fingers in this same position? It's just the 3 strings with my index finger, really. It just so happens there's a C note on the 5th fret on the 3rd string. So let's move this whole shape up to the 5th fret. Much nicer. Now we could go from the F triad here, back to the C major triad here, or we could go from the G major triad here, back to the C major triad here. The left hand can start to get a lot more economical and localized this way. So great, we've got 2 shapes now. What about the third shape? Well, we had this shape that really looks like E out of Caged, but we got there from this adaptation. And that gave us the E major triad. Well, if this is E on the 4th string, I bet I could move my hand up, replace the open second string with a finger on a fret, but keeping the shape itself the same, and I'd probably have other major triads, wouldn't I? So if I go, here's the E note, well, if I move everything up 1 fret, that's going to be F, and then the 2nd fret. I got to replace that open string that was below there, so let's use different fingers in the left hand. Well, there's the shape. It's an F major triad. And if this is F because this is the note F, where's a C note on the 4th string? Well, it's at the 10th fret. So I could go from the G major triad now here, up to C here, or I could go from the F major triad here, back to C major here, or I could go from C major here, up to F here, or I could go from C here, down to G here. We didn't cover this one, but it's this shape that we identified. Just moved all the way down. It's a straight line, so one fret only. We're not going to have any frets. We're just going to play the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string open. It's the middle part of a Movable G chord. So great, we've got all of our majors now. The minors are simpler. If you go back to the starting shape, any note that you raise up 1 fret becomes the root of a minor triad. The root just being the name of that minor triad. So you don't even have to go through the process like before of looking on the string above and identifying the name of that note. It's the one that you move up to. So if I moved up here on the 2nd string, well, I moved into the note on the 2nd fret on the 2nd string. Either I know that already or I get a chart and I find out it's the note C sharp. So this has to be the shape for a C sharp minor triad. But if I move it up just 1 fret, I go C sharp to D. I have D minor triad now. Well, how is this going to be handy? Well, what if you're playing a C major scale in triads and you go C major comes first, and the next one is D minor. Well, I have D minor here. And the next one is E minor. Well, if this is D minor, doesn't this go D sharp, E? This must be E minor. I bet I use the same shape. Didn't we just learn the F major shape by moving this up? So I've got F major here. Didn't we have G major here? Well, the next one's supposed to be G major. And so somebody says, well, the next one you need is A minor. And I'm learning all the triads on strings 4, 3, 2. That's my study right now. So I need an A minor triad moving up. Well, what about this shape I had? That was E minor. This was D minor. Is there an A note on the 2nd string? Yeah, at the 10th fret. And the last one is going to be some kind of diminished triad. So let's not get scared. Let's go back to what we started from and see how interconnected everything is and how simple it is. What are the names of the diminished triads in this shape? Well, remember, we raised 1 note by 1 fret and we lowered 1 note by 1 fret. And that gave us some kind of diminished triad. Well, good news for you. The note that you raise into by 1 fret is the root of the diminished triad that you're getting. So when we did this adaptation, and I had you raise up on the 4th string 1 fret, and then lower on the 2nd string 1 fret, the note I raised into is the root of that diminished triad. This is F diminished. If I replace the open string and move my hand up and I have to use some different fingers, I move up from the open 2nd string and I put a fret now in. I have to keep everything else the same in terms of the relationship. So I have now my 2nd finger here on the 2nd fret on the 3rd string, and I'm going to use my 4th finger on the 4th string at the 4th fret. Well, that's F sharp diminished. See, it's the same shape, just replacing the open string with a fret. We went from here to there. So let's say that we need B diminished. Is there a B note on the 4th string? Well, there is at the 9th fret. But that's not going to do me a whole lot of shape when I played the A minor here. And I want to keep leading up. So do I have another diminished shape? Well, that's B diminished. Why? Well, remember when we went back here? And I had you lower this on the 3rd string and raise on the 2nd string, landing you on the 2nd fret. That's the note C sharp. This is a C sharp diminished triad. It just so happens that it looks like the middle part of an A7 chord, but I went over that in another video on triads. If I know that this is C sharp diminished, and I move things up, replacing the open third string, let's go up 1 fret. I better replace the open third string with the first fret, so I'm going to have to use different fingers in the left hand. I'll move my fingers around, but the relationship is the same. Third finger, third fret, fourth string. Index, first fret, third string. Pinky on the second string at the third fret. This is D diminished. Okay, so now I've got a movable shape that's all fretted. E diminished would be here. And I was looking for B diminished, right? Well, I've got a B diminished right here. And I can finish things out with a C triad up here. So I've got a C chord scale now. Might this come in handy if you want to access chord tones for a tune that's in C? And might you be able to use this to learn all the other locations for your chord scales on that same set of strings? If we identify that this was the G major triad, and we identify that this was another form of the C major triad because we just moved it, and we followed this system, could I go starting on the C here and moving a little ways down and a little ways up throughout the first 12 frets to have all the chord tone shapes for this other arrangement? Well, here would be C. Let's look for B diminished leading into this C. Well, didn't we have this? We got there by raising the note 1 fret on the second string, lowering the note on the fourth string by 1 fret. Well, we raised in to the note A. This is A diminished. I bet if I move my fingers up and find where B is on the third string, I'll have B diminished. B is on the fourth fret on the third string. B diminished. Let's go looking for A minor. Well, I had this Melba-ish shape. Boom, it's right there. I've got A minor up to B diminished, back to C. So then could I go D minor? Well, look at this. The root was on the third string. Where's a D note on the third string? Just keep moving up. 7th fret. There's D minor. I bet if I move up 2 more, I've got E minor. Oh, now I need an F major. Well, remember I started here. The root was on the third string. Where's an F note on the third string? 10th fret. And then you move it up 2 more frets and you have G major triad here at the 12th fret, or alternatively you could use the open strings because the 12th fret is just the octave. So you could either get the G here or up here. So in the key of C now, I can do chord scales starting here or starting here. If I start here, so I got a lot more chord tones than I ever did before. There must be one more place I could start and base learning the chord tones, learning the triads around. Well, remember we had this. And remember we learned it's another version. If we just move the hand up, we've got C major triad here. So that's going to give us C here. It's going to give us F major down here. It's going to give us G major here. So all we need to do now is fill in the missing minor shapes and the missing diminished shape. Well, that's got to be pretty simple based on what we've done so far. So we're starting, this is the C, the start. I need some kind of D minor triad now. Well, what happened here when I was back at my starting shape and I learned my minor shapes? I had to go up 1 fret to get a minor triad. Well, I did this. got F minor because this is the note F. Is there a D note on the 4th string that I can adapt this shape to? Just move your hand up. At the 12th fret, there's D minor. So I've got C here. Uh-oh, I need E minor. Well, how hard can it be to either move up 2 frets and wind up here? And you look at the fingerboard and you go, hold on a second. I'm now at the 12th fret and this guy is a little bit above. Isn't this a repetition of the octave? It sure is. You go all the way back down here, E minor, and you just use the open strings above. So now you got, and now I need the F triad. Well, remember, we already learned that. Here. Then I need the G triad. We already learned that. Here. Well, then you need the A minor triad. Well, it's this shape. Again. It's just moved up from here. It's the same shape as the D minor triad that I learned here. So the only thing missing is the B diminished triad. Well, didn't we already kind of go over that? Remember? We had this, and we adapted, and we raised on the 4th string, and we lowered on the 2nd string. We got F diminished triad. And through a process of seeing how this works, I took you and we wound up here. And at that point in time, we didn't want to use it because we were working from a different set of shapes to keep the chord scale ascending, moving steadily up, sounding nice and pretty. But now we can use that shape. Now this is the missing link. It's the B diminished triad shape. And it's going to lead home. So starting from this C, I've unlocked the chord tones fully in the key of C on strings 4, 3, and 2. I could either start on C here, I got a C here, I got a C here, I've got F here, I've got F here, I've got F here, I've got G here, G here, G here, or I've got A minor here, or here, or here. And I've got B diminished either here, here, and up here. All the chord tones I'd ever want for C major are unlocked now on the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings. Through the process of just moving these shapes, if you're learning all the chord tones in the key of D, move your hand up 2 frets. Instead of C here, you go starting D major triad here. Everything else will work identically. D major here, D major here. Then you can start practicing that around the circle of fifths. And if you're not familiar with the circle of fifths, what it is, how it helps to unlock the guitar, you might want to go watch that next.